2010 Board of Education to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Flax?
Here.
Mr. Lulo?
Here.
Mr. Kirky?
Here.
Mr. Costick?
Here.
Mr. Luchetti?
Here.
Mr. Kozel?
Here.
Mrs. Molinari?
Here. I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's meeting. It's good to see all of you out tonight and not at home yet in front of your televisions. Public comments. We do not have anyone signed up for public comments, so we will move on to the consent agenda. We have an approval or a motion to approve the September 22nd regular and closed session meeting minutes, the approval of the September 29th, 2016 special meeting minutes, approval of October 3rd, 2016 special meeting minutes, and approval of payrolls dated October 5th and October 20th, 2016. Motion, please. So moved. Second.
Second. I'd like to make just one note on the last regular board meeting. We need to note that Mr. Kirking was appointed as Secretary Pro Tem. It's at the bottom, but it's not where we actually appointed him.
Okay.
Just housekeeping.
Thank you. That is on the regular meeting of September 22nd, so noted. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Flax?
Aye.
Mr. Lulo?
Aye.
Mr. Kirky?
Aye.
Mr. Costick?
Aye.
Mr. Luchetti?
Aye.
Mr. Kozel?
Aye.
Mrs. Molinari?
Abstained. Awards, presentations, and recognition. Curriculum and instruction update.
We have a lot of great information for you tonight. This is our October update. Starting out with, this was just recently released that two of our teachers, John Cupp and George Chart, were recognized by the University of Chicago with Outstanding Educator Awards. Several of our teachers get awards like this every year. It's from freshmen that go to that college and are going into education, and they say, who influenced you, who was your best teacher, and the recognition for those two guys. George was at North last year, John was at East last year, Monica's grabbed both of them for West. So, but it's there, they are absolutely fantastic. Just some updates on what's happened in the last few days. We did PSAT testing, which is the National Merit Scholarship, and because the state's going to that SAT instead of ACT, we've really encouraged even our younger kids to take it, and those numbers are huge. You know, far bigger than we've had before. I think the word's out. When you look at 2,000, almost 2,100 kids taking that yesterday, getting their first taste of SAT style testing, it was great. Not sure how East did it with over 1,100 kids, and it was a lot of displacement. But boy, it's worth it to get that 4-hour experience. So great job, no glitches, everything went off beautifully. Over the last 2 weeks, Amy and I have been out to some of our feeder schools talking about the new placement exam, the PSAT 8-9. I just want to show you 3 or 4 slides that we showed the parents. I really like this move. Going to that PSAT 8-9, we get incredible data. Each student gets a 4-page report. It breaks down their reading score, their writing score, their overall. Gives them a little prediction on where they might be on an SAT in 3 or 4 years so we can monitor. We're going to have kids that take the PSAT 8-9 in 8th grade, again in 9th grade, a PSAT 10 in 10th grade, and then the regular SAT. So we're going to have that 4-year data that we look for. We can see who's growing, who's slipping, and chase those kids down. So I think it's great. The Explore didn't give us this. That really nice breakdown, not just in the 3 subjects, but over on the sub-score side, on the right side, how they do in what they call the heart of algebra, just a basic knowledge of algebra, how they do with problem solving. And then those little cross-test scores at the bottom. There's not a science section, but in the math portion, there's some science charts and graphs. In the reading portion, there's 2 science passages, and they create a science score based on those other things instead of having the kids take another 45-minute test. So I like it. I think it's going to be effective. Just yesterday, our first feeder took it, and that was Summit Hill, and then everybody else will be up in the next 2 weeks. So Each student gets a nice score in reading. Here's what you're good at, here's what you need to work on. And then every student, once they take one of these national tests, and our kids are starting this in 8th grade, they get an automatic account with College Board and Khan Academy. And what's beautiful about it is they can have it on their phones, they get daily practice, but for each student, they'll get this, Jeff's Path to SAT Success. It's all individualized by how they did on that first test. So if they struggle with factoring and math, they get extra practice and little videos on math. So it's things kids can do at home. I think this is phenomenal. And again, we didn't have that with Explore. We got raw numbers, worked fine, but this is the future. So really excited about that. Amy loves this. Old guys like me think this is magic, but a kid can print out a score sheet. They can bubble in an entire test, take a snapshot of it, and get an instant score. And it's all graded digitally, and here's the ones you missed, and here's where you're at, and things that I wish we had had for a while. So the last piece of mine tonight, and this is in front of you, but this is one of those sworn to secrecy things that the state gets ready to release their report card, and about a week ahead of time they send it to schools and they send it to the press. But it's under what's called an embargo. You can see it as board members, but we can't roll out the scores tonight, but I can tell you how we did. And so when it comes out next week, these will make some sense to you. We really had a great year. The first category is freshmen on track. This is brand new, last year and this year. They take a look at all of the freshmen in our buildings and they say they're on track to graduate on time or they're not. And so all I can tell you is last year's numbers were in the 96 and 97 percentile, which is fantastic. This year, every school was up. And so Central, East, North, and West, North will still get a report card. All 4 of those scores went up, so it means we're doing a better job of identifying our freshmen. Here's what I really like about this. For last year, 1,747 freshmen in our district, 69 were labeled at risk. We identify all 69. They get on an RTI list for interventions. The teachers know who they are. So over the next year, the next 2 years, you track those kids, you give them some extra attention. And it really ties right into graduation rate. We don't lose many kids now. So it's a great piece of data. The AP is our new normal. This is what's exciting to me. Those numbers, we've never seen anything like that on the far side. That's just our participation. What'll come out on Friday in the report card, how our sophomores did, our juniors, our seniors in terms of kids that took the test, kids that passed, the number of kids that got dual credit. The exciting thing is all of those numbers are a lot higher than they were in 2015, and that's when all of our schools made those national lists. Central's doubled, everybody else went up a few hundred. I mean, it should be a great year for us that way. Graduation rates, all I can tell you is, again, we went up, so it's the highest we've ever had for the 4th year in a row. If you look back to when we really started looking at this, 12-13, 90% at Central, 92. You see what last year's was, 95, 96, everybody's higher than that. Everybody went up. So really doing a beautiful thing. Ed Options has a piece of that, and they're going to graduate their 100th kid from that Ed Options program. None of those kids get through without that program in place. So that's great. Park scores went up significantly. We were okay with the English language arts, even though it was 30 to 40% of our kids meeting. That was about where the state was. We were a little higher. We were not okay with the math last year. First time in my 30-some years here that we were below the state average in anything. So we gave the challenge to the math people. We put in the new algebra curriculum. And there's your number. You can do the math, but there's your numbers on the right side. Central went up 51%, double the number of kids that met, 52% at East, 68% at North, 46%. So they took the challenge, and the numbers now are going to be well above the state average when we were below last year. And that was just the first year of algebra. So those are great things. So the last piece of this is, how does that happen? How do we continue to get these bumps year after year? And that's the board goal that Amy's going to share with you. Providing feedback through classroom observations. We give the teachers on paper, here's what you need to teach. We direct the department chairs, but then Amy and the chairs get in and actually do a lot of teaching and coaching and making sure our people are doing what they need to do and they're nailing it.
Got
be loud.
Yeah, it's a coaching point.
It's okay. So one of the reasons why our instruction goal instructional goal for this year to focus on Common Core literacy and math standards had to do with what Tim just mentioned. That not only the PARCC exam is aligned to Common Core, but so is the SAT, the new SAT, and so is the ACT. All of these companies have realigned themselves with the national movement to try and attempt to be our accountability test, which the SAT is going to be. So let's backtrack for just a second where we've been. It was 2 years ago our professional development focused on the 6 shifts in literacy instruction from the Common Core. So each one of the lunch and learns that we provided focused on one of these 6 areas. And so the bottom line is we needed kids to be doing more reading with for text evidence and more writing with text evidence. And so that kind of became the theme for the year. The year after, just last year, the professional development in terms of lunch and learns focused on Common Core math, and we decided the key term here was problem solving. The more we could get students doing higher level thinking, analyzing and problem solving, the more they would be prepared for what's to come. So that's where this year comes in. This year's goal is to, after we presented all those ideas and the teachers had those in their hands, this year was the encouragement and the support and the monitoring of these ideas. And that's where Tim mentioned all the classroom observations come in, and that's where I provide feedback, focusing on teachers who get in and begin to implement and have strategies for these areas. So October's observation focus, this month I have been in many reading, math, reading and social science, science and English classes focused on searching out text-based answers, that shift number 4, so that whole idea of text evidence. And here's what it sort of begins to look like. First of all, one of the cultural things we have at Lincoln Way is learning targets. When you walk into a classroom, you will see on the front of the board what the learning target is, what the objective is for the teacher to be having the students accomplish for that day. It's clear for the students, it's clear for the teachers. So in this class, for example, they were working on the big idea of analysis, but you can see that the sub-idea was to identify text evidence. And so what does this look like in class? Sometimes kids have their faces in books because they're in there seeking out the answers, seeking out the text evidence from the assignments that the teachers pose. Sometimes text, remember, comes in electronic forms, and a lot of times students are bringing their phones and their electronic devices to seek out the text as well. A lot of times this looks like classroom discussion where the teacher is leading either debates or classroom conversations with the following up questions with how do you know? If that's your idea, how do you know? Where in the text does that support it? Where in the text, cite your source where you know that that's to be the truth or support your idea or your claim. Some teachers even took, I thought this was fantastic, this was actually a bulletin board created by a teacher with the concept Prove It, the whole idea of text evidence and how to cite it and how to cite it correctly with MLA resources. So I thought that was pretty neat. In terms of the feedback, most of the feedback, obviously it's pretty small text, but most of the feedback that I provide to the teachers has to do with just support and kind of sharing with them where the evidence was of these shifts in their teaching. Because a lot of times teachers just do what's really great for kids without realizing some of these things are really built into what they do. So this was some examples of the feedback. Back in September, same idea, went into the math classes looking for kids constructing arguments and critiquing reasoning. And this is what this looks like. The days of rows of math classes, or math classes full of rows of students is long over. We've got kids talking math, arguing math, critiquing ideas. Went into this class, there was one giant circle with the student at the front. He was presenting ideas and the others were critiquing how he solved the problem and how they would have solved it instead. It's incredible. The math class has certainly undergone some changes. And the same thing, the feedback that we provide, I point out some of the great things that they do, support, encourage them, what they've got going on in the class. And that's the big idea with this idea. And with the Common Core focus, providing the feedback, getting into the classes, really kind of sharing with the teachers and supporting and encouraging what they've got going on. And of course, preparing our students for whatever state tests they choose to give us next. Thanks. Thank you, Dr.
On the new testing results that we're getting, are they, is it similar to other information that the parents will have access to? Do you know how that?
The nice thing is because our feeder schools gave the test there, they get the results. And so they get the hard copies. They're going to make extras for us but those copies can be sent home anytime that the parents get them. They also get a national percentile, and we're going to provide a Lincoln Way percentile. Because sometimes, the Lincoln Way kids may be at the top nationally, but parents want to know, well, where do they rank at Lincoln Way? If I'm deciding between, do I want an honors class, do I want a regular class? So,
Good.
Are we going to start offering the PSAT 9, or are we waiting until the
no,
8th graders
well,
come next year?
that'll be a November discussion too, because it's not like last year where it was a huge chunk of money, but we are going to have to pay for that if we do it. So what we would hope to do then is the SAT day, April 5th, have a 9 for the freshmen and a 10 for the sophomores, and so they'll be anywhere in the,
Yeah, we're gathering that cost
Yeah.
now, but we plan to bring it back to the board. Remember, last year, we spent nearly $100,000, I
Yeah.
think it was, Tim, on the ACT.
Right.
We won't have to do that this year, and I think the ballpark now is
Yeah.
30,
30 to 40 would be max if we really,
and that would be to test every freshman and sophomore then, so we start to track that.
and the SAT itself is free because that's a state sponsored, so.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Student council presidents. From Central, we have Ms. Kelly Newton. From East, Ms. Kylie Mead and Mr. Raj Patel. And West is Mr. Mitchell Alcazar. And Ms. Newton is going first. from
Okay.
Central.
Hello, I'm Kelly Newton. I'm one of the co-presidents here at Lincoln Way Central. And currently our student council is focused on planning Halloween night, and we'll be focused on this through the end of the month. Halloween night is a student council run event, which features many of our other clubs and sports at Lincoln Way Central. Each activity who is involved with the event will be manning a door throughout the building so that the community members can bring small children to come trick or treat throughout our building, which is pretty exciting. And then the event ends in our AP room, where the student council members will be running a small fun fair where the kids can win prizes by playing games to finish out their trick-or-treating experience. And so recently we've asked our student council executive board members to advertise the event by handing out flyers throughout our community. And this year the event is on October 29th, which is a Saturday, from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and we are looking forward to hosting it once again. So thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
I'm Mitchell Alcozer. I'm one of the co-presidents from Lincoln Way West. My other president, Sam Mitchell, is currently sick, so she's at home resting up. West Student Council right now is in a really good place. We just finished up most of our sales for breast cancer awareness t-shirts. They are pink or black with the warrior in either pink or black contrasting with the breast cancer awareness ribbon, and it says hope, faith, and strength. And we haven't sold them since, I believe, my freshman year. And so we brought them back, sold them for $5, and we sold nearly 7 boxes in the first week of having them out. So they love those t-shirts. And then from there, Western Council is focusing on planning a tentative movie night to host for Halloween, where we'll show a Halloween-themed movie, make popcorn, water, candy, all that sort of stuff. And we're going to hopefully host it accordingly to playoff football games if that so happens. So we're kind of in the works for that. Also, we are finalizing a theme for twerp, and with that twerp theme ideas, we want to top homecoming. You know, it was a really great success for us, but we want to top it and give something people to look forward to in the coming months. Aside from that, we're also planning Thanksgiving baskets, where we will be collecting food from students in the student council and then delivering them later in November to needy families in the community.
Thank you, Mitchell.
Lincoln Way North had their, or not, Lincoln Way East had their homecoming about 3 weeks ago, and we started the week off with a parade, which East had never done in the past, and 700 students participated in that, so that was exciting. And then we had the Homecoming Olympics, and there was 84 teams and 800 students that participated in that, so that was a really fun 2 nights of dodgeball, and we had a scavenger hunt and games out in the football field. So that was fun for the students. And then we had our homecoming king and queen, which is Alex Diortenzio and Maya Darwish. And the dance, we sold 2,400 tickets. So it was a very successful dance, and it all ran smoothly. So pass it off to Raj.
Hello, I'm Raj Patel, the other co-president from East. Our next project coming up will be in November as Student Council prepares for its Silver Turkey Food Drive. in which first hour classes will be asked to collect non-perishable food items that will be donated to the Frankfort Township Food Pantry. And along with that, it's currently Make a Difference Month. And some of our highlights include the boys soccer team sponsoring Kick for a Cure. The girls volleyball team hosted Volley for a Cure. Our POMS team participated in the Orland Park Breast Cancer Walk. Cheerleading is selling pink winter hats with proceeds going to the Mokina Cancer Center. Along with that, our FPLA will be hosting a blood drive. And our Pennies for Patients drive wraps up tomorrow. And all of these event totals will be added up at the end of the month. And we're all working for a good cause since it's Make a Difference Month at Lincoln Way East too.
Thank you very much. Thank you, students. It's always delightful to hear what's happening in the schools. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Now I'd ask the three principals to step forward. Sorry, but it is Principal Recognition Month, so if the three principals would please step forward. We have some guests here this evening. Dr. Mahalik, Dr. Provost, Dr. Schmidt. You would be the three principals.
My name is Sabrina Corsetti, and I am a student from Lincoln Way East. In honor of Principal Appreciation Week, I would like to thank Dr. Mahalik for not only her outstanding work as a principal, but for all of the effort that she has poured into making herself a prominent, supportive figure in the lives of the Lincoln Way families. It is nearly impossible to list all that Dr. Mahalik has done for the district, as she has held not only the title of a principal, but also that of a teacher, a coach, the founder of Be the Change, and many more. In my time at Lincoln Way East, Dr. Mahalik has been incredibly accessible and accommodating, pushing me to reach new heights academically and personally. From her appearances at pep assemblies to her pep talks before mathletes competitions, Dr. Mahalik and her smiling face have had a truly immeasurable impact on her students, most of all on me. Dr. Mahalik's selflessness and constant devotion to her work are only two of her most impressive qualities that I aspire to someday attain. I could and would continue forever given the opportunity, but to conclude, I would like to say on behalf of every Lincoln Way East student and staff member, thank you, Dr. Mahalik, for everything that you do for us. We can never thank you enough.
Okay. Hi, my name is Caitlin. I'm a junior at Lincoln Way West, and I'm here to talk about how Dr. Schmidt has positively impacted my life. Sometimes there's a misconception that the students who get all the attention in high school are highly involved, highly achieving honor students. However, those words did not describe me my freshman year in high school. As a freshman 2 years ago, I didn't take my classes seriously, did very poorly as a result, and had to take summer school. Though I didn't know Dr. Schmidt personally, she still recognized me on my first day of summer school at Lincoln Way Central. Once she knew where my classroom was, every time she was at Central for a meeting, she would stop in my classroom to make sure I was working hard and staying on track to pass English 1. She would check my grades online and talk to me about what I needed to do to improve. Mainly because of her, I passed both semesters with B's. When school started sophomore year, Dr. Schmidt continued to make sure I didn't get off track again. She frequently took time out of her busy schedule to check in with me and really took an interest in my life, and both in and out of school. There was one particular day last spring when I was feeling incredibly overwhelmed with fear that I was going to fail my math class for the semester. Dr. Schmidt happened to see me panicking about it at PPS and asked to come see me after school. Dr. Schmidt used to be a math teacher, so she contacted my teacher about the material we were working on, identified practice problems for me to try, and tutored me that afternoon in her office. I've never had a high school principal other than Dr. Schmidt, but I feel like there probably aren't that many principals out there who go so far out of their way to make sure one individual student feels so important. I feel very fortunate that I was chosen to come speak tonight because I am so very appreciative of the extra efforts Dr. Schmidt has made for me. However, I know that I am not alone in my appreciation, so I speak for all of the students of Lincoln Way West when I say that we are so thankful that Dr. Schmidt is our principal. We love her school spirit, her orange boots, and her contagious smile. We're proud to be warriors at her school.
Hi, I'm Noah Bryles. I'm a senior here at Lincoln Way Central, and I've had the pleasure and honor of knowing Dr. Provost since my first day. I got to shake his hand at open house my freshman year, and coming in as a freshman, I was a whole different person than what I am today. If I was asked to do this 4 years ago, I would definitely have said no. So that's one thing. Dr. Provost's leadership from the pep assemblies, getting thousands of people to cheer for our school and to lead like that, to shaking kids' hands in the hallway. I see him every day. It's really good to have someone of such leadership to be able to put a face on. I don't think the school would be the same if you just had a principal that you would never see and just heard of. From his involvement, from going to football games, asking kids how they're doing, he stopped in on a couple of my classes. He was just at the NHS induction, and I remember last year he gave a good pep talk before we were all announced, and that really hits home about how important all the achievements here are at high school. For me, Dr. Provost, I've always seen his door is always open. He's very helpful for students, both academically and socially. As a freshman, his leadership pushed me to join clubs and to become president of something like FBLA. He's put me with the right people and in the right groups, and I've really been able to succeed because of him for the last 4 years. One day I hope to call Dr. Provost my friend and not just my principal, because truly that's what he is to every one of us as a student. I admire his ability to speak with us and to lead in such a way that makes high school fun. Overall, Dr. Provost is a great man. He's an amazing leader, a passionate man, and most of all, a caring individual for the students and the community here at Lincoln Way Central.
Thank you, students. Thank you, principals. The board, on behalf of the board, I would like to personally thank you. Your leadership style, your dedication is truly inspiring and role models for all of us. This year, the transition for all students has gone well as for staff. We have to remember that staff has made transitions also, and it's all went smooth because of the three of you. Thank you so much. May I have a motion to approve the outstanding invoices?
Motion to approve the outstanding invoices in the amount of $1,686,912.98 dated October 20th, 2016.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Lucetti?
Aye.
Mrs. Glatz?
Aye.
Mr. Lulo?
Aye.
Mr. Kirking?
Aye.
Mr. Costick?
Aye.
Mrs. Molinari? Mr. Kozel?
Aye.
And Mrs. Molinari.
Aye. Thank you. Personnel report. Dr. Tingley.
If I could refer you to your personnel report found at your places this evening. Under employment, Katie Bowman, full-time parapro, Central. Heather Janelle, full-time parapro. Actually, probably in your backup materials. I do not believe this changed.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Heather Janelle, full-time paraprofessional, Central. Haley Waveford, full-time paraprofessional at East. And William Cullen, full-time bus driver, transportation. I ask that you accept this employment as presented.
Do we have a motion to approve the employment as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Glatz?
Aye.
Mr. Lulo?
Aye.
Mr. Kirking?
Aye.
Mr. Costick?
Aye.
Mr. Lucetti?
Aye.
Mr. Kozel?
Aye.
Mrs. Molinari.
Aye.
Under resignations, Michelle Stiglick, bus driver, transportation, requesting to resign effective September 23rd. Tim Silikowski, maintenance, East, requesting to resign effective September 22nd. Kyla Reddit, parapro, Central, requesting to resign effective September 23rd. And Alda Shanta, Phillips, bus driver, transportation, requesting to resign effective October 7th. I ask that you accept these resignations as presented.
Motion to accept the resignations, please. Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. So moved.
Under retirement, Paulette Six, bus driver, transportation, requesting return to IMRF effective October 31st. Denise Kavanaugh, parapro, East, requesting return under IMRF effective May 27th. Sharon Moniger, assistant personnel director, District 210, requesting retire under IMRF effective October 31st, 2016. Jeffrey Keller, math instructor, mathematics department, requesting return under board option A effective at the end of the 2020-2021 school year. I ask that you accept these retirements as presented.
Motion to accept the retirements, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Glatz.
Aye.
Mr. Lulo.
Aye.
Mr. Kirking.
Aye.
Mr. Costick.
Aye.
Mr. Luchetti.
Aye.
Mr. Kozel.
Aye.
Mrs. Molinari.
Aye.
Under other business, Edith Lutz, part-time print room clerk, East, recommended for full-time status employment as she has successfully completed her 90-day probationary period. And Sherry Kesrick, part-time print room clerk, West High School, recommended for full status employment as she has also successfully completed her 90-day probationary period. I ask that you accept these employments as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Glatz.
Aye.
Mr. Lulo.
Aye.
Mr. Kirking.
Aye.
Mr. Costick.
Aye.
Mr. Luchetti.
Aye.
Mr. Kozel.
Aye.
Mrs. Molinari.
Aye. Treasurer's report, please.
Okay, if I can refer you to your treasurer's report that was sent electronically. As you can see, with the close of September, first quarter of the year, tax anticipation warrant payment of $20 million to Old Second, and then a $7 million new loan for a net of negative $13 million. You can see our fund balance at the end of September at $22,181,000. That's the treasurer's report. On the next page is the revenue detail for September 2016. This is set up a little differently as it's been done in the past. It's revenue by fund. Just gives a little bit of a different breakdown. Something that we thought would be beneficial. On the next page is the schedule of investments, and there's been some discussion and questions about should our CDs no longer be in working cash as we've loaned that out. I've talked with Mrs. Lezo about that, and we're going to talk once again with our auditors. As this is a temporary loan, you know, right now they're still in the working cash. If they advise us to move that to where monies would be placed, we'll be able to do that. But at this time, it's not their CDs and it's not money we would be using at this time. We'll go ahead and talk really quick about the expanded treasurer's report before we ask for a motion. As we look through the different funds, you'll see in the Ed Fund, our revenues are up 10.2% as compared to last year. That's due to an increase of tax collection. We have not yet received categoricals from the state of Illinois. In the Ed Fund, you'll see in expenditures, we are down 4.6% compared to the same time period last year. The Operation and Maintenance Fund, we've moved some of the expenditures out of O&M into the Ed Fund, and you'll see a net savings of 31.7% compared to that same time frame year-to-date last year. Transportation, once again, moved some of the expenditures, but yet our expenditures are down 22.8% compared to the same time. IMRF, Social Security and Medicare is pretty standard. Tort, we've talked about some of the movements of our tort to purchase services. We'll continue to track that, and then working cash. What's significant now in our total operating funds, our revenue is up 10.6%, but our expenditures are down 11.4%. Now, we don't believe we'll be able to maintain this 11.4 throughout the rest of the year, but considering last year, the entire year we spent $89 million, we spent 22. Let's see, where are we right now? Budget, actual. We spent $20 million about 2.3 million to this point. So we're 11.4% better than we were last year. We need to stay, 5% better to capture those savings that we had anticipated. So we're on a good track. We'll continue to monitor this. We're a quarter of the way in. We'll be a third of the way in when we meet the next time, and be able to continue to monitor the expenditures as we move forward. And our total all funds then, it's a net gain so far of 9.3%, and that's on an almost $104 million total expenditures from last year. I would ask that you accept the treasurer's report as presented, and then I'll be willing to answer questions.
Motion, please, to accept the treasurer's report for September 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
Scott, you mentioned we didn't get categoricals, but if I recall, we used to have it state aid and categorical. Yeah, because it's a pretty big chunk of changes. Do we get state aid? Is that also delayed? Because there's a big difference from the 2 years.
We've received one. Am I right, Kelly? I know we have not received categoricals. Have we received our state aid?
We're receiving our general state aid.
We have.
Our
There are-
payments every month.
No, so that's missing categoricals right now.
And,
No, we have received general state aid,
okay.
no
So we're
categoricals.
missing 52% as we make up the categoricals?
Transportation, special ed.
Okay.
Scott, is there a way with those categoricals that we can get a kind of an aging type report, like an accounts receivable, aging report?
That's that, yes, yeah. We can work on that. So we'll put together, what's kind of due when and what's hanging out there.
Because I think it would be useful, especially as we talk to our state legislators
Yep.
and other people, to say, you're 90 days behind with the state with, I know it's still a small piece, but it's still important.
Yes, we can do that.
So I'll get back to that point in a second. On the treasurer's report, the working cash loan to the transportation fund, it has to be paid from the 2006 levy tax receipts. Does that mean it's due 10/30 of 17, or is it due at the end of this fiscal year? If we could just put a date on there. It's not something for right now, but just as we're kind of monitoring that, it'd be helpful to know.
Good.
Back to that point, I think as we, jumping ahead to the student activity report where we kind of put the memo ahead, which I kind of asked for, I think now if we, are trying to use this report to monitor where we are with the budget, it would be helpful if there was also some, memo along with this that kind of told us, the things that are a big variance right now.
Correct.
For example, our expenses are looking very good, but right now it looks like, we're probably have something on special ed that's due or hasn't been paid yet.
Correct.
So I think if we list those things out, also as we get farther away, salaries, it looks like it's tracking now, but if you remember the first 2 months, it wasn't because the payments in 2016 were smaller because we were paying on the 126 scale. But let's monitor that we're getting back to that. So if that was noted on here, that, that's going to help as well, kind of close the gap. And then anything that's kind of, outside the norm, as you look at, percentage change, if those could also be noted.
Yes.
I think that would help out, especially as we go to post these on Word docs once that's up and running and,
Correct.
they're available publicly.
Because I agree with you. The memo that came with the student activities report was very, very helpful. Very helpful.
Yep.
So I appreciate that.
No,
And I agree, once we get it up, with the board docs and that purchase and that we're in the process of doing, I think that will make a big difference with transparency. We'll be able to see exactly what we see.
And let me add quickly, the cash flows also as part of this that were sent electronically. As you can see, the 20 million has been placed. We're going to fall about 4 million short in the ed fund based upon our projections at this point. The total all funds, though, we fall about 2 million short. We were anticipating potentially needing to borrow 8 million. 7 to 8, we may be in the neighborhood of 4 million. As we continue to track this each month, it becomes a little bit clearer. We do have reserves in our insurance pool. If it were a situation where we needed to hold a payment for 1 month, we may be able to do that, waiting for tax distribution, but that's something I would bring back to the board. But as we move forward right now, with the cash flows being what they are, with the treasurer's report, we'll be able to go back to the banks and say, we're trending in the right direction. We may need 2 or 3 million to get us through the rest of this year and gain that, gain that loan. And then we'll determine how much we would be willing to, or be able to pay at the close of the fiscal year in June.
I still think we have to pursue very actively, making sure we have the a bank
Ready
in
to
place to
do.
get the
No, I
TAWs,
agree.
because we don't know the state funding or when it's going to come, and you don't want to rely on that. So I think we have to still, keep informing the banks of
They'll be
that
seeing
we're
our-
staying on budget.
Yeah,
and
they'll be
that-
seeing this tomorrow, and we meet with the state on Tuesday afternoon. The state, we have our first quarterly review, so they come Tuesday. We've sent electronically all of our financials, all the cash flows. So Mark Anderson, and then I don't know the gentleman that will be taking his place because he's retiring, will be here Tuesday afternoon. We'll go through all of this, and I'll make sure the banks have a copy of this within the week as well, to be sure that we can secure that last, $4 million, so we're not scrambling at the end.
Quickly, Scott, you mentioned
Yes.
there's excess in the insurance. What dollar amount are you thinking?
In terms of, well, we don't want to get in the habit of this.
I understand.
In the past, right now, there's over $1 million in our fund balances, and our payment's about $800,000. Linda knows that from our, and so before I started, there were times where the June payment wouldn't be made, and then 2 would be made in July. We would only even consider that if we had enough funds to carry us, and that we weren't borrowing from the other pools of money. But, it might become a situation where if we know in 15 days we'll be able to cut that check, that might be something we would consider.
Want to know the size?
Yeah.
And when is the next time you speak with the bank regarding?
I can talk to them tomorrow. I probably need to, I told them we would review at the end of the quarter, which is now. So I'll get that review to them, and then the quicker we can get a commitment, I think, the better. We had scheduled it for November, but probably need to schedule that 2 weeks away, but we need to get that done, because I know that is the most crucial piece out there right now. If we have to go to the state and borrow 2 to 4 million, that does not put us in a good situation. So we need to secure funding, get us through the year, be able to illustrate to them now how much less we would need next year on the current pace that we're on.
Just encourage communication.
Yes.
Constantly.
Yes.
Great. Anything further? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Platts.
Aye.
Mr. Lulo.
Aye.
Mr. Kirking.
Aye.
Mr. Costick.
Aye.
Mr. Lucetti.
Aye.
Mr. Kosel.
Aye.
Mrs. Molinari.
Aye. Student activities report for September 2016.
If I can refer you to the students' activity report that was sent electronically. Very thorough cover sheet that Mrs. Lozo has developed. It illustrates the, let's see, we're about 8 fund balances that are in the negative. Those will all be addressed within the month through athletics or by movements of funds within our student activities. 2 of the funds will be zeroed out at the close of this month. We had receipts of $783,000 and expenditures of $664,000. We're entering now, believe it or not, the winter athletic season. So there'll be some fundraising moving forward, and the fall accounts will kind of be dwindling down as we move into the winter sports season. I'd ask you to accept the student activity report as presented.
Motion to accept the student activities report for September 2016.
Move.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
What is the plan for the rest of the North funds?
Mrs. Lozo has been working on those this week. In fact, she met last week with Band Booster presidents to discuss the dissemination of the music funds. And we'll continue to go through that and split those up, whether amongst the 3 campuses. The majority of those will go directly to East.
What about all the other ones?
You mean all the other north?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll either go to East or be split. Yes, they'll all be, the goal is by the end of the month to have those
Okay,
closed.
okay.
The end of October.
Thank you.
We were going to have a larger, like, cleaning up of the accounts. I thought we were going to try and have each school,
We are.
all three of the schools have.
Yes. That's still.
And when is that going to occur?
Mrs. Lezo, what are we thinking? End of the month or end of November for all three schools?
I'm hoping to have a report in November for you of what I would recommend. I'm not going to do anything until it's obviously discussed by the board as to what you would recommend proceed. It's just, I've been going through a process of just understanding the history of all of these accounts, because I think that that's important to understand the history before obviously making any recommendation as to how we should how we should proceed in the future. So, the north balances could absolutely be moved to east by the end of the month. I'm hoping to meet with the boosters next week again to finalize that, and then all of the other accounts, I think will just automatically be moved to east because it'll follow the students. I've had some requests, there's some that are case-by-case basis where I'm working with the sponsors at the three schools to try to determine if there should be an allocation that goes, some goes to central, some goes to west. So that's kind of a one case-by-case situation, but I plan on having all of that in a report to you for the November board meeting. And then from there, we can decide how to proceed for the rest of the year. If we leave some just open for this fiscal year, and then with the plan to close them all out, by the end of the year, or if we immediately close them out and then a decision needs to be made as to what to do with remaining account balances in some of these. So it's a long project, but I'm working on it.
And I know that she was reviewing other school districts to see what student activity funds, like, I know she was looking at Lockport compared to 230, some other schools, just to look at the number of accounts and to get some other ideas. But we'll have.
But this includes closing any accounts that shouldn't be in the student activity.
Correct.
Absolutely.
So I would have that recommendation as to what I think should be closed based on the research that I'm doing, and then a decision would need to be made what we're going to do with those balances in those accounts.
The board will have to approve the new student activity chart of accounts. So there'll need to be an explanation for each activity in terms of why this fits.
But there's like 3 accounts on here that will be closing according to the memo.
Right now, yes. They don't need to be there. Correct.
And my last point, this is great, and this is exactly what I wanted. But if we could just have the date that it went overdrawn to the month, because that's kind of like our aging.
Yep.
And I just think when we come back with kind of resetting up these accounts, an $8 overdraft is a lot different, but I mean, what procedures can we put in place potentially to stop something being like $880 overdrawn? I mean, from a check going, I know it's an omnibus account.
Yeah.
And
See, like a
a
perfect example, wrestling. I'm certain that was buying spirit wear because the winter season is coming up. So we just, even if it's a timing issue, but that's something we can discuss with the athletic directors. Typically, that's where it is. This Music Booster East Scholarship East, that will be taken care of with the movement of music money. But typically, it's the athletics that fall under. We need to work with the AD. The athletic
It's usually a timing thing.
I understand those, but I mean, like a scholarship got paid out.
Yes, correct.
And there was no funds in there, so. Yes. I mean, we have to have some sort of procedure in place that doesn't occur.
No, I agree.
Anything further? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Blatz? Aye. Mr. Lulo?
Aye.
Mr. Kirking?
Aye.
Mr. Costick?
Aye.
Mr. Luchetti?
Aye.
Mr. Kozel?
Aye.
Mrs. Molinari?
Aye. Policies, final reading.
These are the policies that have been brought to the board twice. We did not approve them the last time. There was one that there was some discussion, and we did some research with other schools. And after discussing with other schools, discussing with our school nurse that has the most experience, I would recommend that we adopt all the policies as presented other than the school district's supply of undesignated opiate antagonist program. So in other words, we have our deputies that have the opiate antagonist nasal spray. We have 911. Our nurses are not comfortable making that decision on the spot. The other school districts we contacted are following the same procedure in terms of we dial 911 and our resource officer has it. There are also some legal liabilities that were part of the footnotes that were concerns with other schools as well in terms of if you have to file for the prescription, you can't use any of your drug-free money to do so. So you'd have to file for the prescription, you'd have to pay for the prescription. Then it becomes a liability issue in terms of if there is a reaction, the nurse doesn't respond appropriately, there's some liability. We have had issues in the past, and 911 has always been here to work through those. So it would be my recommendation that we accept the policies as presented. We continue to have prescriptions for the EpiPens, for bee stings, for peanut allergies, and the like. And I think we should continue in that direction.
Okay, motion to approve the policies.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Is there liability for that? For the
No.
nurses not administering?
No. If we don't have it as a policy, there is no liability.
Okay.
If we do not have it as a policy.
Back to the EpiPens. How many individuals are certified at each building?
In terms of certified, Chris, our nurses are, but also our deans receive training. I know when I was a dean, we received training on an orange. And so I know our deans and our nurses is certified.
And part of the teacher training, people, so most of the people in the last 8 or 10 years of service.
Yes. And the majority of our students carry their own. The majority of our students have their EpiPen with them. Our most severe cases, all the teachers are trained, all the teachers that have that student know, and the nurse always has that EpiPen with her wherever she goes. So any severe case, the adults that are in contact regularly with that student know. And they know where they have that EpiPen, whether it be in their book bag, their purse, wherever it may be.
Anything further? All those in favor? Aye. 210 advisory meeting minutes from April 14th, 2016. May I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We need to appoint new members to the 210 District Advisory Committee. I have a motion to appoint those new members.
They're on the last.
They're on the list on the last page. So we have Angie Vanderpoy from East, Kim Gonda from West, Susan Helbert from Central, and Carrie Walls from Central. Students, Kate Hohen from West, Kayleen Cooney from Central. Teachers, Brian Nowak from West, and Sean Maher from Central.
Thank you. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Temporary work easement.
This temporary work easement comes from the Village of Frankfort. We previously discussed, Village of Frankfort is in the process of consolidating their existing wastewater treatment plants into a single regional plant just north of Lincoln Way East. Part of the effort, the village must secure a construction easement through the far western portion of the Lincoln Way East property. More specifically, the easement will be located along the western and northern boundary of the soccer fields and the western end of the school property, so they'll go right between the houses and the soccer field. Their appraisal came back, the appraisal outlining the value of the easement at $16,500. It would be my recommendation to move forward with this easement at the time. I've met with Tony Minetti, and where it's going to go. This will begin as soon as the soccer season ends, which is here in 2 weeks. It will be completed and patched back over and seeded by the beginning of our next season. If we have to move our soccer fields over about 5 feet, we'll be able to do so. We have enough space to do so. By moving the goals, it might allow some grass to grow right there in front of the goal because we'll have a little bit different movement. But I think it'd be good to be a good neighbor, allow this easement. We'd get $16,500 out of it, and I do not believe it'll have any long-term impact on our facility.
If we have to move the soccer field, who's
Can we
cost?
get a motion on the table first? No problem. Motion to approve the temporary work easement.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
And who's cost? If we have to move the soccer field.
We have to restripe every spring and fall anyway.
Okay.
So we would just, when we put down the measurement for the grid, we would just move it 5 feet to the side. Because we stake it out, draw those lines each fall and each spring.
They're paying, I'm sorry, go ahead. They're paying for all the resigging and digging and
Absolutely. They'll,
in that area?
yep, they'll reseed, they'll water, it'll be just like new.
So the letter stated it was a 15-foot temporary easement, and then if you look at the grant of easement, it's 30 feet, and the appraisal's for a 30-foot easement. And I just wanted to make sure that that doesn't change anything back there as far as the soccer field, because if you are seeding and the girls' soccer season starts in March, you have to make sure that you still have enough room back there. So I just want to make sure that we were talking about a 30-foot easement.
The 30-foot, from what I understand, Chris, would be the more western and off the fields. The most impact for us is it going north and south between the houses and the soccer field, and we'll have enough space there. We'll have enough space.
Looks like they drew it on the survey at 30 feet too.
Yeah. But the width of the pipe going in, it will not impact more than 15 feet. We were out there, we walked the area, I think we'll be fine.
Is there another agreement, because the grant of easement doesn't talk about reseeding or putting it back?
No, those were discussions we've had, but the village has always followed through on our understandings. They said they're going to put it back the same way they found it. There's no reason to believe that they wouldn't.
And just so you know, just had a little historical, the village also had the garden lots out back behind our school for a number of years that a lot of the community members used, and we've always been, it's always been you take care of me, I'll take care of you with the village in the use of that lot. Now this year, obviously, we had to move those back. They needed to do this work, and they needed to get in there. And it's just nice to see it come through with, a fellow government entity coming forward and saying, here it is, with a reasonable dollar amount attached to it, and being really, it's an easy $16,000 for us.
Anything further? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Glatz.
Aye.
Mr. Lulo.
Aye.
Mr. Kirking.
Aye.
Mr. Costick.
Aye.
Mr. Luchetti.
Aye.
Mr. Kozel.
Aye.
Mrs. Molinari.
Aye. School calendar for 2017-2018 should be at your places. Virginia.
The official school calendar for 2017-18 met with the feeder district superintendents on Monday to discuss the calendar for the following school year. We typically do that in our October meeting. I would propose an institute day on Wednesday, August 16th. Today we started on the 16th, but it was a Tuesday. As you can see, the winter holiday would be 2 weeks in a row, 2 full weeks, with the inclusion of 3 weekends, which parents typically appreciate. The spring break this year would stay on par with the last week in March. We called down to the state of Illinois and asked them for the testing window for the ACT. They indicated most likely an April 4th or April 11th test. Correct, Tim?
Most likely.
Most likely. 4th or 11th. And so Good Friday falls on the 30th of March. If we went back and we put spring break around, the week after Easter, we're taking a chance on on a different test. And we did that one year, several years ago. I just don't think it serves our students well to take an alternate test day. We want to take the same test that everybody else in the state is taking. Area superintendents also agreed that with their testing windows in April for Park, that the last week in March seemed to work for them. So with the spring break the last week of March, we would come back, final exams in May on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, barring those snow days. We'd have an institute on the 25th and be finished by Memorial Day. I propose the 2017-18 school year as presented.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion?
Just for clarification, so the emergency days count in the pupil attendance days?
They do. Those 5 count in the 180. Correct.
Anything further? All those in favor?
Aye.
Report District 843, special ed. Ron Lugo.
I attended that meeting, and the 5 member districts were able to get their GATA money in with the cooperation of the new business manager, so we're all on track with that. Also, the foundation, you have a parents group there similar to our foundation. They had a very successful pizza gathering, and they too, like us, give back to the school, and they bought technology, some smart boards, and some things that weren't in the budget. So very successful, great community event. That concludes my report.
Thank you. FOIA requests.
FOIA requests were in your backup materials from September 7th to October 12th. There were 29. However, just in the last 4 or 5 days, we've had about 29. So Dr. Murphy and bookkeepers have been very busy the last 3 days gathering information, and those will be included in the report for FOIA requests for October.
Thank you. Legislative report.
No report this evening.
Building and grounds. Mr. Wilkie.
Good evening. At your places, there's a document that I'm calling now the Operations and Maintenance Report. Look at this. This was the Utilities and Contractual Maintenance Report, but we've added supply and service accounts that the building used to this report. On the front page, the first year-to-date by location obviously just tells us what building the money's being spent at. By category to the right, you can see that we added supplies and services. The supplies accounts are basically supplies that the maintenance department uses daily to repair things in the building or to supply the restrooms, the grounds, baseball mix, things like that. The services line is contractors we call in to help us with repairs, inspections of the fire alarms, elevators, things like that. On the bottom of that front page, you can see under September year-to-date as compared to last year, spending is down by $363,000. Basically, year-to-date, that's about 20%. We don't expect it to continue at 20% moving into the winter months. And obviously with the service account and the supplies account, unexpected breakdowns of mechanical equipment could affect that greatly, one way or the other. The following pages break down by building. Central is down year-to-date, $67,000. East, $32,000. North, $279,000. And West is up $18,000. Obviously, we're contributing that to the increased enrollment there. That's my report. If you have any questions now or at a later time, let me know.
I like the reports. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hospital did this with
Yes, this was the the first run of this, but yeah, we'll try and get them out sooner. This was the first run, and Rich was trying a couple different templates to come up with this one. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkie. Mrs. Epple.
Good evening. Each school will be performing their fall plays over the next 3 weeks. West will be performing The Matchmaker on October 22nd and October 23rd. East will be performing Little Miss Christie on October 27th, October 29th, and October 30th. And Central will be performing The Man Who Came to Dinner on November 4th and November 5th. Since our last board meeting, we've wrapped up homecoming at each school. Over a third of our student population participated in Homecoming Olympics, and over 5,800 students attended each homecoming dance. The Lincoln Way Marching Band will compete at Illinois State University this Saturday in Normal, Illinois. The band is scheduled to perform shortly after 6 p.m. And Lincoln Way Central student Grace Cran made history last Saturday. She was the first golf state champion in Lincoln Way Central's history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for getting all that stuff out. It's nice to pick up a paper and see so much positive stuff about Lincoln Way in it, so thank you.
Asset of the month.
Asset of the month for November, conflict resolution. Young person knows how to plan ahead and make choices at home, model planning and decision making. Allow for mistakes, don't blow up or rescue a child from a poor choice. At school, teach planning on organizational schools and include student leaders on decision making committees and boards. And in the community, have youth identify something they'd like to change in the community, then develop a plan for changing it. See, that's the month for November.
Thank you. Goals?
No goals this evening.
Okay. Superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report, a couple of items to discuss. The first, I sent electronically a draft of a request for qualifications for on-site child care services. The RFQ would call for a 3 to 5 year agreement. It would be at all 3 campuses. In the draft, there's a minimum initial annual fee of $60,000. Minimum is what we currently have agreed to. If someone wants to present their RFQ more, that'll be something I bring back to the board. And then each year, an increase due to the consumer price index. We'd start at 60 and move forward. Scope of services wouldn't change much from what we already have in place. A selection, there would be a committee formed, myself, a couple of teachers, and selection would be based upon the qualifications of the submitting providers. Timeline, if the board were to give me direction to move forward with such a RFQ, I'd mail those out to those interested parties tomorrow. Proposals would be due by November 10th. We would interview those potential providers between November 14th and November 23rd. We must have a recommendation to the board by December 15th if we were to move forward with such an item. I'm willing to answer any questions or thoughts you may have, and looking for direction whether to move forward or get out of the on-site child care business at this time.
You set up some meetings on a Saturday or Sunday.
Correct.
Tell us how those went. I mean, obviously the ones that went okay.
They did. We had four different companies have now toured the facility. There was some interest. They still have some questions, but I think some of the questions will be answered through this RFQ. That'll also give them the formal opportunity to ask questions that I'll answer everyone then that would be involved in the process. In terms of hard, fast commitments, I really don't know yet, but we did have some organizations come out and spend some time and tour the facilities on a Saturday morning.
Scott, is it my understanding that this is just advisory, it's not binding, so even if we move forward with this, we're still not committed if we choose not to?
Absolutely not. The final vote, the final decision would be a board decision. So going through an RFQ we're looking for qualifications. We're looking, if we were to move forward with this, who would be a solid partner? Because obviously if we are going to move forward, we would want a very reliable business in place. Otherwise, it's going to cause much more headache and problems than not doing it at all. So obviously, it's there's nothing more important to our teachers than safety, security, and and their own children. So we would want, if we were to move forward, it'd have to be a reputable company and one that would be willing to meet the list here in the request for qualifications.
Did we get the pulse from our teachers?
Yes, we did, and over, I don't remember the numbers, 94, 96? Yeah, 94, 96% of our faculty, not only teachers, it was faculty and staff. Faculty and staff agreed that it was, advantageous to have that as a service.
And Scott, refresh everyone's memory, the costs associated with moving forward we were right around the 60 figure, correct?
60 figure is what we are gaining
costs.
this year. It really doesn't cost us that much, Chris. We're and Rich can help me, but we're 10 to 12,000 per site, I believe is that about right, Rich?
If you look at our expenditures in O&M and just divide it by square footage, that's how we came up with the number. It was 10 to 12,000 per site. Yeah.
Per site. And so what this other money does, the district has put forth resources. We own the parking lots, we pay for the parking, or not the parking lots, we own the playgrounds, we pay for the playgrounds. And so this is a cost recovery also as we move forward.
Yeah, the only other thing that I didn't see in the RFQ was a contingency of, if playground equipment broke, we would have, because we own it, we would have to replace it. I mean, I just want to kind of stay as close to that
Correct.
even as, I don't want to get caught having to pay out to, if we can do this as a, no cost benefit.
No cost
to the
benefit,
district.
yes.
Do we have to put a minimum on here? That was my question.
What would you be thinking?
Just drop the minimum?
Well, I mean, it's non-binding, but I mean,
I think I have an expectation though of what they might have to put out.
I guess by minimum, I was saying at least 60,000. But don't 60,000 is the minimum they would be willing to pay.
So they would
And they
know
could pay
table
more.
stakes to come in is 60,000 or don't even fill it out.
Right.
Did you not read it that way, Chris?
no, that's fine.
Okay, I know what you're saying is it sets that the price is at 60, but if you fill out an RFQ and you say, well, I'm going to pay 35, you said, oh, we forgot to tell your minimum was 60. It seems like it'd be wasted effort on both parts. So I think that the minimum expectation at least sets a bar. If somebody really wants it bad, they can go more than 60.
If not,
Again,
this is a public meeting, they're going to know it's 60 anyway.
Right,
the way
but
they
in
come out.
either case, well, they're going to know what last year's was paid. I mean,
Yeah.
Who sample agreement? Who orchestrated this? Who drafted it?
This is basically a draft of our current agreement, and so this has been in place for a number of years, but there were adjustments made by Mr. Rizzo in the last year.
So he has vetted this we're good from.
Correct, and
we're not
he
in
would.
a tenancy type of agreement.
No, and he added, we talked today, and he would add one more paragraph that I will share with everyone before we would move forward, but it would be if it was deemed that it became a taxable property, the contractor would have to pay all resources to have to either pay the property tax bill or fight that property tax. But John still doesn't feel that's an issue. However, there'll be an additional disclaimer now that we're moving forward. And I just received that today.
Anything further? I think the direction is to pursue. Please.
And bring it back to the board.
But no later than December.
No later than December. We have to, yes, absolutely. We're on that.
So that would timeline, that would put us December to make a decision. We would have them in place by January, know who they were by January so that they could.
They begin the process.
So they begin the process of
July 1 beginning.
getting all the licensure and everything in place to be
Yes.
in place for August when the kids come back.
Correct. And one more item, as we start to look down the road, and some of this will be discussed during the strategic planning, but we know that our long-term bond structure is, at some point the district's going to have to make some adjustments, or at least discuss some adjustments. In 2019, there are some opportunities. 2023, there are some opportunities. I began pursuing and talking with some experts in the field of are there other options? Are there other options that the board, that should at least be brought to the board and vetted? You know, right now, the interest rates are at a historical low, and so it might be worth a discussion. So I have a meeting Monday afternoon. I met with the gentleman earlier this week. I have 2 other meetings set up. We don't have a financial advisor. When I meet with these individuals, we're talking scenarios as we look at other districts that have been faced with similar type of setups. I mean, we know that our bond and interest rate is going to increase as we move forward. It was put in place with the assumption of growth of EAV. We have not met the levels of those growth of EAV to keep that bond and interest flat or even close to flat over the out years. So, you know, I'm interested in your opinions, but at this time, I want to bring something back to the board in a timely manner for the board to at least discuss and begin to vet out. Okay, and we know in 19 we can do this, and that would be enough. And then in 23 we can do this, and that would be enough. Or do we need to take a bite at the apple now? So those will be items that I'll be pursuing on the board's behalf. And welcome for any thoughts that you may have.
I think it's great to have other options. I think we need to look at every option available to us.
I would agree. In addition to the 2 callable features that you're referring to, there is the concept of potentially restructuring the whole card.
Yes.
And even though our financial situation may not have been in the same situation as when the bonds were issued, which creates risk, which determines the interest rate, which you've got a great lesson on what the tax anticipation works.
Yes.
They are historically low. And without the EAV coming in, and if interest rates started to move up before when we hit those bump ups in those bonds, we could be hitting a perfect storm.
Yeah.
And so without significant growth, whether it's residential, commercial, or whatever it turns out, it needs to be foundation growth.
Correct.
And if interest rates tick up, I don't like that scenario. So I think the ability to do this now is very penny wise versus potentially being pound foolish. Now, we may come to a point where the answer is do nothing. But at least to your point, we will have vetted all the options. And we wait to vet those options when interest rates start ticking up. You're going to think 25 basis points, so what does it matter? We're talking $500 million. Put it another way, $500 million. That's real money.
So I agree we should look at every option on the table. I think the calls is when these 2 bonds are callable is a pretty straightforward one. I think anything else should become with a ton of Board of Education to the Board of Education, because when you're talking about those cabs, I mean, you're still going to be paying the interest on them. You're just escrowing it, and any restructuring is going to be very expensive and add a ton of interest to it. And I mean, study the 2013 refunding that was done in this district, and you'll see that. So I would just be very, very careful. And it has to come with a lot of education, because people have to understand the structure of those bonds and what was done. Yep.
Well, but I agree, both short-term and long-term.
Absolutely.
So I just want to weigh it all out, that you're either going to pay now or you're going to pay later. You're going to pay. And it's just a question of what rate environment you're going to pay it in.
Yeah, but my point is those cabs, you're going to pay, restructuring, what are you doing restructuring? You're just putting money in escrow, so you're still paying all of that interest. It isn't like you're refinancing.
But at a point where, well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Later.
No, I'll bring it back, but no, we will at least pursue what the options are as we move forward. We know we have a couple opportunities coming to level that out, so we need to see exactly what that will look like. But I'll continue to work with that and keep the board apprised as we move through that. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Tingley. Under correspondence, everyone received resolutions from IASB. Please look through those if there's anything that you want Mr. Kozel to address. He is our delegate at the convention, so he will be able to bring forth anything that...
I think it's important because this is one of the lobbying bodies down in Springfield and nationally for different topics, and they're out there, and their positions are there. So if there's anything you'd like to, express to the organization, please let me know, and we will get that expressed.
Thank you.
And I have 2 items for correspondence. The first from the Franklin Square Park District. First of all, we'd like to congratulate them on their gold medal, but then they thanked us. The National Recreation Park Association, in partnership with the American Academy for Parks and Recreation Administration, named the Frankfurt Square Park District as the Class 5 recipient of the 2106 National Gold Merit Grand Plaque Award. The announcement was made on October 6th during the general session of the NRPA conference held in St. Louis, Missouri. Park District Board staff and residents extend their sincere thanks to the cooperative efforts extended by District 210. The access to school campus and facilities directly benefiting residents was an integral component of the Frankfurt Square Park District receiving national recognition through the Gold Medal Awards. Congratulations to Jim, and thank you for that. I have one more item. We've received word from the Will County Historic Landmark Plaque Agreement. The Will County Historic Preservation Commission hereby donates a plaque entitled Lincoln Way Highway Marker to Lincoln Way Central High School, Lincoln Way Community High School District 210. So our Lincoln Way marker out front along Route 30 will receive a nice little plaque that we'll post and maintain and keep that with the mile marker. So we appreciate that, and that's a nice historical landmark out in front on the property. That concludes correspondence.
Thank you. We're going into closed session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of employees, collective negotiating, established sale or lease price of real estate. May I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Blatz? Aye. Mr. Lulo?
Aye.
Mr. Kirkian?
Aye.
Mr. Costick?
Aye.
Mr. Lucetti?
Aye.
Mr. Kozel?
Aye.
Mrs. Molinari?
Aye.